Hello and welcome to my next discussion on the Grand Lenormand. In this video I'm going to begin starting with the 7 of clubs, which we have here, and this particular card is, I believe it's the first one we've gotten to that's part of the zodiac grouping, and in this case it represents Capricorn. And as you can see, it's the 7 of clubs. The constellation is supposed to represent Orion, and personally, well, most of these constellations, they just don't look like what they are particularly supposed to look like. I find it very difficult to even see the 3-starred belt or anything, but that is supposed to be Orion. And Orion brings doubts and uncertainty. The letter G represents willpower, efficiency, and concentration. Here in the middle of the card, we have an image of, this is supposed to be Pan, that has been transformed into Capricorn, who is trying to escape this giant. And the interpretation of that is, if you have an artistic talent, you're going to encounter success very quickly, and you owe it to yourself to move and travel for pleasure. The card represents a promise or some other elevation and success. Down here at the lower left is an oven, and it has flames coming out of it. It's a lit oven. The interpretation of that is, even if one flatters you profusely, be aware that nothing is ever won in advance. Don't allow yourself to fall asleep on the job, especially if you're promised fame and fortune. Ask for some time to reflect before you make any decisions. Now over here on the right, this is a worker, and he's holding some tools, and the interpretation on this is that you're very clever using your hands, and it seems that your creative potential will drive you directly to fame. But be aware that there's one condition, and that is to renounce wealth. So you might be known as a very artistic and qualified person in an artistic realm, but you may not get that recognition through wealth. It just would be through fame, which in this day and age it's difficult to have that dichotomy, but back in the time when these cards were first done, that actually happened quite often, where very well-known artists did not make much money or even died penniless. Here in the center, for the floral arrangement, we have hibiscus, a weeping willow, and a flowering chestnut. And the interpretation for that is that a new arrival will take a big step into your love life. If you're alone, there's a chance that you may not be alone for very much longer. And that is, and the overall interpretation of the card, it represents a need to closely follow your projects. It requires effort and a certain amount of knowledge before you're led to success. Pan is saying that you may be able to get what you desire through your seductive talents, but remain very cautious in any negotiations. Act tactfully and gently, and stay on your guard. Okay, that's the 7 of clubs, excuse me. Next, we'll talk about the 8 of clubs. Oh, there goes my microphone. Okay. So the 9 of clubs brings us back to the Hermetic science or alchemy. Wait a second. 6. Yeah, that's the 8. Did I say 9? I meant 8. And the first thing we have on the constellation, and again, these really don't look like the way that we normally have seen them here in the U.S. It's supposed to be the Ursa Major, which is the Big Dipper or the Great Bear, and that interpretation of that constellation is that you're granted mastery over your emotions. The letter D stands for determination, efficiency, and tenacity. Here in the center we have an alchemist with 2 censers, and it says alchemist is between 2 containers, and indicating that the contents that are fixed and those that are volatile. So these are the fixed contents, these over here that are smoking and burning and they're moving around, those are the volatile chemicals or whatever, what have you. The interpretation is the card always marks a desire for affectionate and friendly relations. If you wish for a marriage or union, your desire will be realized without major problems. Loneliness will soon give way to a happy meeting. Down here on the bottom left, this is the solid and volatile matter mixed into the same container. The interpretation is you're very lucky because happiness brightens your marriage and daily life. All current friendly relations evolve in joy, good humor, and harmony. Take a full advantage of these sweet moments of pleasure and tenderness. Over here on the bottom right, this is just a container with solid matter only. And that is that your marriage or union is going through turmoil and tension, but it's not anything terribly serious, just normal stresses that all couples go through. In contrast, if it has been going on for quite a while, there may be a risk of separation. Now, this is an unusual set of flowers for the floral arrangement. Again, it only gives 1 flower, and then the other 2 are just pistils and stamens. And the only flower given is actually a herb, marjoram, which is a type of basil or oregano. It's not quite the same. And the interpretation of the floral arrangement is finally you will reap the fruits of your labor and efforts. You are all and always productive and radiant in your joy that makes you generous. The overall interpretation is the card does represent anxieties and financial planning. There is a project that's at serious risk to play out as like a double or nothing. And as described here, between the solid and the volatile, the alchemist seeks to find harmony and equilibrium. It's going to be the same for you. If you manage to find a good combination, whether material, professional, or emotional, in all ways and all forms of union, without exception, will be favorable for you. So basically it's a card about finding balance between the stable and the volatile. And the last card for this session will be the 9 of Clubs. And in this card, we have the constellation of Hercules. They just don't want to behave. And it announces a large release of money or funds. So some kind of money or material well-being is on the way. The letter I indicates passion, idealism, and inspiration. Here in the middle, the main subject of the card is Hercules fighting against the Hydra. At the same time, there's a crayfish down here that's biting him on the foot. And the crayfish, if you know the myth, was sent by Hera. And then I also have a note in the picture here. It shows a crayfish, but in the myth that I read, it's actually a crab, and it's Cancer, the crab, and which Hercules crushes under his feet while he's battling with the Hydra. The interpretation of this image is that if your current situation isn't very good, you now have every chance to realize your ambitions. If you're currently very well off, you may find that you need to settle some minor problems. So, if you're in a bad situation, things are bound to get better. If you're already quite okay, there might be a few problems that you'll need to address. Down here at the bottom left, this is supposed to be a guy from India that's selling dates, the fruit, and the interpretation of that is that you are in a prosperous period which permits you to realize your most secret desires. Success smiles on you, and you can allow yourself to begin your most ambitious projects. The outcome is going to be beneficial. Over here on the right hand side is a miser counting his coins. And that interpretation is that you're in a situation where you're going to find yourself facing some small financial problems. A loan would be welcome. It's time to call in a few favors. And if you have friends that you can ask, they will be of great assistance. Now here in the middle for the floral arrangement, the three flowers are red clover, hellebore, which is also called a Lenten rose, and moss. And the interpretation of that grouping is prudence is recommended in these times where you may have a tendency to exaggerate and waste. This is not a good time for gambling or financial risks. Now for the overall interpretation, the card is supposed to represent good financial prospects and richness in all areas, particularly with associations or prosperous partners. Like Hercules continuing to fight even when Hera sent her crab, you must bravely face the tests and obstacles presented to you. It's only through your will and courage that you will find your ability to obtain success and rewards in your affairs. And that's where I'm going to leave it on this video. In the next section, I will try to go through 4 cards from the 10 to the King of Clubs. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this enlightening.